The film begins 3 years after the global catastrophe in which strange monsters appeared on Earth. These monsters attacked humans and killed them, leading to the annihilation of entire cities. These monsters were named Reapers, and the reasons for their appearance remain unknown. The Reapers are incapable of reaching the mountains or towering heights, specifically unable to surpass 8,000 feet. The humans who survived either live far from the Reapers' territories or managed to escape from them quickly. Survivors marked safe zones on the ground to avoid crossing into dangerous areas. The events of the film begin with a young boy named Hunter, who arrives at a mountain called Rocky, which stands 7,740 feet above sea level. This means it is a dangerous area located 260 feet below the line. Hunter was exploring the surrounding underground areas, observing children playing at a safe distance. Suddenly, he heard the sounds of the monsters approaching, and feeling worried, he decided to climb to the top of the mountain. As he did so, Hunter could hear the sounds of the monsters getting closer. Indeed, one of the Reaper monsters was chasing him. Hunter heard the creatures roar behind him, but he managed to cross the line safely. The monster stopped at the line and couldn't cross it, so it turned back. Hunter was panting from fear. At this moment, we see a small village called Lost, located higher up the mountain, where about 193 people live. After his adventure, Hunter returns to his father, named Will. Will noticed that his son seemed worried, so he asked, "What's wrong?" Hunter then admitted that he had crossed the line. He said, "I just wanted to see the people living in the other mountains." Hunter added that there were rumors suggesting the monsters were currently in a state of dormancy. Will realized that his son's actions were reckless, but he spoke to him calmly and explained the danger of what he had done, asking him not to repeat it again. After this conversation, Will went hunting with his girlfriend, Katie, and together they were able to hunt a deer. On their way back while carrying the deer, Katie asked about Hunter. Will told her what had happened and how Hunter had crossed the line to observe the Red Rock village because there were children his age living there. Katie understood the situation and said to Will, "It's natural for Hunter to do that. He's the only child in the Lost Village. Of course, the top priority is safety and staying well, but there are many people who find it hard to adjust to this isolation we're living in." However, Will had a suspicion that Hunter wanted to see the place where he last saw his mother. Next, we are introduced to Will's neighbor, Nina, a physicist. Nina was always shooting at a certain part of the monster, which she used for self-defense. Nina was conducting experiments in an effort to discover the monster's weakness, and her experiment relied on continually using weapon ammunition. The next morning, Will was reminiscing about old memories with his wife, Tara. We learned that Tara, in the past, had gone down with Nina and crossed the line, and since then, she never returned. Since that time, Will had lived alone and taken on the responsibility of raising his son, Hunter, a task that was difficult for Will on his own, especially since Hunter suffered from a serious illness that made it hard for him to breathe properly. Hunter needed a respirator and oxygen tanks to manage his health crises. Will was changing Hunter's oxygen tank, but the problem was that this was the last available tank. Therefore, Will considered going to the city of Boulder to get more oxygen tanks. The next day, Will was teaching Hunter farming and hunting skills, so he could rely on himself and secure food for the future. Coincidentally, it was Hunter's birthday, and because Will didn't have any money, he resorted to bartering and managed to get a meal of macaroni and cheese. Will returned to Hunter with the meal, which made Hunter very happy. Hunter asked his father to turn on the radio, but Will refused, saying, "We can't waste electricity in the winter. Electricity is limited, and we rely on solar power." Later, Will sat with Katie, and they exchanged conversation. Katie asked, "If we were living our normal lives, what would you be doing right now?" Will answered, "I'd be watching hockey games with Tara's father, even though I didn't like watching sports. But I miss going out and spending time with them." That night, Hunter's condition worsened, and he needed another oxygen tank. Since there were no more available, Will had to give him an injection that would help improve his oxygen levels for 5 days. Will decided to go to Nina and ask her to accompany him on the journey, as Nina was the only one who had survived the monster attacks and had extensive experience due to her research and experiments on them, making her the right person for the task. From their conversation, we learned that in the past, it was Nina who took Tara, Will's wife, and crossed the line because Nina wanted to reach her lab. Since then, Tara never returned, and this is why Will harbors resentment toward Nina, blaming her for his wife's death. Despite this, Will asked her to come with him to Boulder, relying solely on her expertise, knowing that she would be valuable on this journey. Nina told him, "I didn't expect you to go there. The The road to Boulder is dangerous and full of monsters. Will responded confidently, I know a safe route. But Nina replied, I am very familiar with the maps, and I assure you, there is no safe route. All the roads leading to Boulder require staying below the line. Nina confirmed that she knew exactly what she was talking about and said, because my lab is in Boulder. Will then told her that he had to go there because he needed the oxygen tanks. Otherwise, Hunter would die. But Nina refused to accompany him, saying, I don't want to sacrifice my life and die. I was lucky once and survived the monsters. Will replied, You're the reason my wife died, so you owe it to me to come with me and repay the debt. He added, I know a path in the mountains that will allow us to cross the line safely twice, and I know that you yourself want to go down to experiment with killing the monsters. Nina responded, Don't forget that Boulder is 2,000 feet below the line. If we get there safely, we'll face the monsters waiting for us. One monster is enough to wipe us out. Will said to Nina, I know all of this, but I have no other choice. He then left her and walked away. Nina remained sitting alone, remembering the moment when the monsters attacked her and Tara. That memory was incredibly painful. In the end, Nina decided to join Will. On the other hand, Will asked his neighbor to stay with Hunter while he would be away. He then went to his friend Tim to get weapons and ammunition that would be able to slow down the monsters. Meanwhile, Katie met Will and said to him, Why didn't you tell me you were going on a trip like this? I'm not letting you go alone. I'm coming with you. Give me a weapon too. Will refused to let her join the trip, telling her that the road was too dangerous. But Katie firmly rejected his refusal, saying, You need someone to watch your back, and besides, I can't stand living here anymore. I want to go down a bit. Will kept insisting that she shouldn't come with him because of the risks, but Katie was determined and didn't back down from her decision. Nina didn't want Katie to come with them and said, You've never encountered a monster before, and you don't understand how dangerous the journey we're going on is. You've never seen a monster kill a person, and you've never seen bullets have no effect. Even if you shoot a monster in the face, it will kill you without hesitation. Nina tried in every way to scare Katie into not joining them, but Katie paid no attention to her words and remained determined to join the trip. While Will was saying goodbye to his son Hunter and reassuring him that he would return soon, the three of them began their journey. Nina brought with her a special compass that could detect if there were any monsters nearby. When they reached the line, Nina tried using the compass, which told her that no monsters were close. As they continued along the road, they found a military vehicle. Will began searching it for ammunition or anything useful, while Katie found something useful to modify her weapon, as she had decent experience with firearms. Meanwhile, Nina was searching for monster tracks. Then Nina said to Katie, You're no use to us. You only decided to come because you're fascinated by living in the wild. This remark angered Katie, and a fight broke out between them. The argument escalated to the point where they began physically fighting, until Will intervened and broke it up. As for Nina, she didn't care about what happened and continued on her way without paying Katie any attention. As they continued on their journey, they began hearing strange sounds around them, but they discovered that these sounds were caused by wild animals. They used these sounds to determine the direction from which the animals were coming, then continued their journey until they reached a ski area called Vista, located at an altitude of 7,120 feet. They were very close to reaching 8,000 feet. Suddenly, Nina noticed through the compass that a monster was nearby. Indeed, she was able to spot it from a distance, with trees moving and a beam of light emanating from the creature. The group became very anxious, and Will suggested that they run quickly to cross the line. However, Nina felt that they didn't have enough time and suggested they take the cable car because it would get them to the line faster. Katie wasn't sure about Nina's plan and decided to take a different route, but she didn't refuse to move quickly. Will, however, trusted Nina's plan, so he decided to activate the cable car. Nina stood under the cable car to buy time, while the monster was getting closer. At that moment, Katie launched a grenade at the monster from a distance, but missed her aim. However, the monster kept approaching them, and just as they reached 8,000 feet, something unexpected happened. The cable holding them in the cable car snapped, and they all fell to the ground. Despite this, they were able to run quickly, crossing the line at the last second. The monster then stopped chasing them. Afterward, they found a house at 8,200 feet and decided to stay there for the night to get some rest after everything they had been through. That night, while they were at the shelter, Katie asked Nina, How are we going to get rid of the monsters? Nina replied, The monsters appeared suddenly all over the world, so we didn't have time to study them and figure out how to kill them. The biggest problem is that they killed 95% of the Earth's population in 1 month, and their only goal was to wipe out humanity. Personally, I want to find answers to my questions about them. While Nina and Katie were sleeping, Will reflected on his memories with his wife, Tara. He recalled their conversation when she had planned to go down with Nina on her journey across the line. He had tried to make her understand how dangerous that journey was. As for Nina, she only aimed to find a solution that would guarantee her fame and recognition through eliminating the monsters. But Tara was confident that Nina knew how to kill the monsters, and she said to Will, "Every year, hunters' oxygen tanks will run out. What's the difference between going down now or in a year?" Will replied, "The difference is that you'll live with me for 1 more year, that's the difference." The next day, they continued their journey until they reached the mine in the mountains. Will explained the plan to them, saying, "We'll walk through this tunnel until we reach the other side, where the area will be safe at an elevation of 8,023 feet, and it's about 12 miles away from Boulder. Once we enter the tunnel, we'll descend from the 9th floor to the 8th. We need to be cautious because anything below the 8th floor will be in a dangerous zone." Nina wondered how Will was sure the other side would be at an elevation of 8,023 feet, saying, "There might be bends in the tunnel that could take us beyond the line." But Will didn't respond to her question, which made Nina feel that he was hiding something. Nina realized that Will might be deceiving them, and the tunnel wasn't as safe as he claimed. It might actually lead them beneath the line. Nina asked Will, "How far will we be from the line?" He answered, "About 231 feet. Nina then said angrily, "You should have told us about the danger before we left the village." Will responded, "The compass you have will help us." Nina was surprised and said, "The compass doesn't work underground. It only works above ground. The bigger problem is that the monsters can see in the dark and they can track the carbon dioxide we exhale, and they are much faster than us." Nina hesitated to enter the tunnel, but Will confidently said, "We'll only be in the tunnel for 45 seconds. Nina found herself with no other option, as they had already traveled a long distance, so they decided to enter the tunnel. They turned on their flashlights, but soon discovered that the path ahead was blocked by a welded door, forcing them to descend to the 7th floor, which lay beyond the line. They had to walk 900 meters through it. Of course, Nina and Katie were hesitant and scared, but Will reassured them, saying, "Either we go down now, or we turn back, and I'm not going back." Will advised them to move quietly, as running would create noise that could attract the monsters to them. Running would also increase the amount of carbon dioxide they exhaled, making it easier for the monsters to track them. He emphasized the importance of moving slowly and cautiously. They descended the stairs to the 7th floor, and as they moved forward, they heard a sound behind them. They grew anxious and tried to calm themselves for a moment. Then, they looked back to see that a monster was chasing them. Without wasting much time, they ran quickly to distance themselves from the creature. During the escape, Katie threw a grenade at the monster to slow it down for a moment, and they ran quickly, passing by a tractor. The grenade temporarily disabled the monster, but they had to enter a small hole in the wall to hide. Everyone tried to control their breathing as much as possible, so the monster couldn't track them through the carbon dioxide they exhaled. The monster inserted its tail into the tunnel, sensing the air, and they pressed themselves tightly together to keep their breathing as quiet as possible. At that moment, Will lit a torch to give them some fresh air. They then discovered a small exit and crawled through it. Katie was the first to emerge on the other side, but unfortunately, a monster was waiting outside the exit. It killed her and dragged her body away. Will was devastated by her loss. As they continued on, they found a staircase and climbed to the 8th floor, where the sounds behind them began to fade. Finally, they reached another exit and emerged from the tunnel. Nina was crying over Katie's loss, filled with a desire for revenge against the monsters. They continued their journey until they reached a house and a cart. They entered the house to rest for the night, where Will found a box of macaroni and cheese and shared it with Nina. During this time, Nina said, "I loved Tara so much, and I started to love Katie too. But unfortunately, her fate was death." Will, feeling guilty, replied, "It's my fault. I shouldn't have taken you on this journey. It would have been better if we just climbed the mountains without any gear." Nina told Will that regret wouldn't help, advising him to let go of the guilt and focus the anger inside him to direct it toward revenge. Will then asked Nina about the contents of her laboratory. She told him there were magnesium blocks in the lab, and that she had believed the monster's skin was impenetrable due to its electrical charge. She added that if her theory was correct, any bomb or projectile covered in magnesium oxide could hurt the monsters and cause them damage. Will was very impressed with this idea, as it gave them new hope in their fight against the monsters. The next day, they drove the car they had with them and crossed the line at full speed until they reached the abandoned city of Boulder. They headed to the hospital to search for oxygen tanks. After a long search, Will couldn't find the tanks easily, but when he finally did, Nina started shouting at him to hurry because the monsters were getting closer. Will quickly filled his bag with the tanks, and they ran as fast as they could to escape. Suddenly, a monster appeared from behind a wall and attacked them with its claws, blocking their way. They had to climb to the upper floor, but the monster extended its arm from behind the wall and wrapped it around Will. Nina found an axe and struck the monster with all her strength, allowing Will to escape. Then, she filled the area with smoke while they tried to escape to another room. They were completely trapped, and suddenly, a beam from the monster appeared through the smoke for a few seconds before disappearing. But moments later, the monster charged toward them again. Will fired at the oxygen tanks, causing a huge explosion that sent the monster flying out of the window. They were shocked when they discovered that the monster had died. After that, they were about to leave the hospital when Nina told Will that her lab was nearby and that she wanted to go there. However, Will refused to risk his life any further, especially after securing the oxygen tanks, and he wanted to return to Hunter as soon as possible. But Nina informed him that the tanks he had would only last Hunter for a year. After that, they would need to repeat the dangerous mission to get more tanks until the supplies ran out completely. She explained that if she could create a weapon capable of killing the monsters, the balance could shift, and there might still be hope for the world. Will finally agreed to go to the lab, and they drove off. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, the monster they had thought was dead began to regain consciousness. They reached the lab, which was located at an elevation of 5,867 feet. Nina told Will that she needed only 5 minutes to finish her experiments. The compass she had indicated that no monsters were nearby, so Will decided to stand by the window and stay on guard. While he was checking the place, he noticed a picture of Nina on the desk and realized that she had a family and a husband. When he asked her about her family, Nina tried to stay composed, but as soon as she saw the picture, she collapsed and started crying. She told him that she was the only one who survived her family because, on the day the monsters appeared, she was in the lab while her family was watching a soccer match. She added that she felt deep sorrow because she couldn't say goodbye to them. Will, who had experienced the same emotions when he lost Tara, tried to be understanding but made it clear that he was still struggling with the loss of his wife. While Nina was preparing the magnesium oxide compound, which she hoped would help her develop a weapon against the monsters, she shot a modified bullet at a part of the monster's body that they believed to be its weak spot. Unfortunately, the experiment failed, but Nina didn't give up. She decided to continue her work. She asked Will to leave to protect himself, but he refused to leave her alone. At that point, Nina insisted on staying, telling him that she wouldn't leave unless she succeeded in finding a solution or unless the monsters killed her. She added that her car was still in the garage, and if she succeeded, she would be able to return to Lost Village. After Will decided to leave the lab and return to Hunter, he couldn't convince Nina to come with him. He felt the pressure to get back quickly, but he didn't want to leave Nina alone in those conditions. So, he took the car and began driving at high speed. Meanwhile, Nina continued her experiments, firing another shot unsuccessfully. When she noticed that the compass wasn't moving, she started to hear the sound of the monster approaching. She gathered her things and ran into the forest as fast as she could. At that moment, Will found himself surrounded by 3 monsters. He began shooting at them, but to no avail. Just then, Nina suddenly appeared from behind the trees, shooting at one of the monsters and killing it. She continued firing at the other 2 monsters and succeeded in killing them as well. In this way, Nina saved Will's life, leaving him in a state of admiration and disbelief. As they looked at the remains of the monsters, Will discovered that they weren't living creatures, but machines, meaning someone had designed them. This explained why they didn't sleep or eat. Everything was just programming. However, they still didn't know who was behind creating these creatures. After this discovery, they both made their way back to Lost Village, where Will was reunited with his son and embraced him. Nina, who had found a way to kill the monsters, raised a pirate flag as a symbol of her achievement. The entire village began to follow Nina's method for killing the monsters, using bullets loaded with magnesium oxide. Nina had hunted a large part of the monster and studied it, which allowed the team to prepare to leave the line and fight the monsters.